When you withdraw your attention from a man, when you stop texting first, stop asking if he's okay, stop showing up emotionally available like you always did, you shift the power. Not out of revenge, not to manipulate, but because you finally realized what he never did, that your energy is valuable, that your time, your love, your presence, it's not free, it costs something. And when he stopped appreciating it, you started pulling back, and that's when everything began to change. See, what most people don't realize is that attention is fuel. It feeds the connection. It keeps the emotional bond alive. And when you're constantly pouring, constantly checking in, constantly worrying if he's okay, you're giving away your fuel without making sure you're being filled in return. And when you stop, when you finally say, no more, everything starts to shift. Not just in him, but in you. Because the first thing that happens is he notices the silence. He feels the absence. You may think he doesn't care, that he doesn't notice, but deep down, trust me, he does, because he was relying on your energy more than you knew. It became his comfort, his safety net, his way of knowing I'm still important. And when you take that away, the silence grows louder than your words ever did. And here's the truth. When you stop giving someone your attention, you're no longer telling them, you matter to me. You're telling them, I matter to me. That's a shift in power. That's when he begins to question everything. Why isn't she calling? Why is she suddenly distant? Did I do something wrong? And for the first time, maybe ever, he's not thinking about what you're doing wrong. He's thinking about what he did wrong. But more importantly, you begin to see yourself differently. You begin to notice how peaceful your days feel when you're not chasing someone who doesn't chase you back. How free your mind feels when you're not trying to solve someone else's silence. You get your power back. And that glow, that quiet confidence, that's when he really starts to feel the loss. Not because you're punishing him, but because you're finally prioritizing yourself. It's not about making him beg. It's not about games. It's about healing. It's about you reclaiming your energy from people who never deserved it in the first place. And that shift, it's powerful. Because the day you stop caring the way you used to is the day he breaks in ways he never expected. That's when he remembers who you were. That's when he realizes what he lost. There comes a moment when your silence starts speaking louder than your words ever did. You used to explain yourself. You used to try so hard to make him understand your feelings, your worth, your intentions. You gave him paragraph texts, emotional conversations, late night talks, hoping he would finally get it, hoping he'd see the damage he was doing by ignoring, dismissing, or taking you for granted, but he didn't. Because he never had to. You were always there to explain it away. But the day you stop talking, that's the day the mirror turns around. Because now, there's nothing to push against. No emotional outlet for him to deflect to. He's left with nothing but himself. And silence, when it's coming from someone who used to love loudly, is not just absence, it's accountability. It forces him to sit with the reality of what he created, and that is the moment everything begins to break inside him. You see, your voice was once his comfort. Even in conflict, even when things were tense, your words reminded him he still mattered, that you still cared, that no matter how badly he treated the relationship, he still had a piece of you on standby. But when you withdraw your voice, your energy, your presence, he no longer hears reassurance. He hears rejection. He hears the door quietly closing, not slamming, quietly, firmly, and that's more terrifying than any fight you ever had. Because now he's left with space, and space makes people think. It makes them reflect. And what he begins to realize in that space is that you were the one constantly trying to fix what he was breaking. You were the one who kept reaching while he kept retreating. But now the silence is his to manage. And that's where the suffering begins. And here's the part he will never admit out loud. Your silence haunts him. He won't say it. He might act unbothered. He might keep posting, pretending, laughing, hanging out with friends. But in the back of his mind, he's wondering why you stopped, why you don't care anymore, why you let go so quietly. Because when a woman who once gave her all falls silent, it's not out of pettiness, it's out of clarity. She's seen the truth. She's accepted the pattern. And she's decided to protect her peace rather than explain her pain. And that kind of silence, that's the silence that breaks a man in ways no argument ever could. So the next time he tries to act unaffected by your distance, just remember, it's not your silence that hurts him. It's the realization that he no longer has access to the version of you he took for granted. There's something powerful, almost divine, about a woman who finally chooses herself. I'm not talking about choosing herself out of ego or spite. I'm talking about that quiet, grounded decision that comes after giving everything she could and getting very little back. There comes a moment where you stop checking your phone. You stop wondering what he's thinking. You stop trying to decode his silence. You stop caring if he notices you're pulling away. You just choose you. And that's the moment everything begins to shift in your favor. He doesn't expect it. He thinks you'll always be there. He thinks no matter how many times he withdraws, how cold he becomes, how inconsistent he acts, you'll still be the one showing up, still loving, still giving, still fighting for something he's been casually holding. And you might have for a long time. But then one day you wake up different. Something inside you snaps, not in anger, but in wisdom. You realize he's not confused. He's not broken. He's not trying to find himself. He just doesn't value you the way you deserve. And once that truth settles in, your energy shifts from needing him to needing peace. And when you stop needing him, when you stop making him the center of your emotional world, he feels it. Not instantly, but eventually, because he was never feeding the connection. He was feeding off of your presence, your validation, your effort. He was being emotionally nourished by the very love he didn't know how to return. So when you take that energy back, it creates a void, a silence, a coldness that isn't loud or dramatic. It's simply unbothered. And that's what shatters him. He'll start to replay the things you said. He'll remember the small gestures, the consistent love, the times you were there for him, even when he didn't deserve it. And he'll miss that. Not because he suddenly became a better man, but because he's lost the woman who made life easier for him emotionally. And that loss hits harder when it's not met with begging, with pleading, with tears, but with grace, with calm distance, with you rebuilding your life, your glow, your rhythm without him. See, choosing yourself doesn't mean you stopped loving him. It means you started loving yourself more. It means you've learned the difference between waiting for someone to change and walking away to protect your peace. And that's a lesson he'll have to learn the hard way while watching you thrive from afar. Let him feel the absence of the energy he once took for granted. Let him feel the weight of your silence. Because the moment you choose yourself fully, that's the moment he begins to break quietly. There's something a man will never be prepared for, and that's the moment he realizes he no longer has emotional control over you. You see, when he knew you cared, when he knew he could come and go as he pleased, when he knew your heart was invested, he moved differently. Not out of love, but out of comfort. He knew you'd be there. He knew your emotions were wrapped around his actions. He knew if he pushed, you'd pull. If he pulled away, you'd chase. That power was his unspoken weapon. He didn't have to say anything. He just had to do less and watch you try harder. But when you stop caring, you don't respond the same way. You stop reacting. You stop letting his inconsistency affect your peace. You stop chasing clarity from someone who only ever gave you confusion. And that's when the game flips. Because now he can't provoke a reaction. Now his silence doesn't shake you. His distance doesn't move you. His breadcrumbs of affection no longer feed your soul. And in that silence, yours, not his, he begins to unravel. The truth is, emotional control is how some people stay relevant in your life without offering anything real. They feed off your overthinking, your compassion, your hope. But when your soul finally says enough and your spirit no longer dances for crumbs, you take that control back, not through confrontation, but through emotional neutrality. You don't hate him. You don't need to explain yourself, but you just stop letting him rent space in your heart. And this emotional detachment is not cold. It's healing. It's peace. It's power. It's you realizing that your love is a gift, not a guarantee. That your presence should be earned, not assumed. And when he sees that, he no longer has access to your emotional world. That's when regret creeps in. Because now he sees what it meant to have someone who felt deeply, gave genuinely, and stayed patiently. And that realization hits differently when it's too late. He'll try subtle moves, checking in, small conversations, maybe even nostalgia. But you'll notice the difference this time. You won't respond with hope. You'll respond with boundaries. Because you're not trying to hurt him. You're trying to heal you. You're not playing a game. You've just stopped playing yourself. And that's when he breaks, not from your anger, but from your peace. Not from your silence, but from your indifference. Because nothing shakes a man more than realizing he no longer holds the key to the heart he once neglected. When you stop caring, something beautiful happens. You finally give yourself permission to heal. Because caring too much for the wrong person is exhausting. It's not just emotionally draining. It robs you of your self-respect, your time, your confidence. You spend your days analyzing texts that never came, conversations that ended without clarity, nights wondering what you did wrong, when the truth is, you were loving someone who didn't know how to love you back. And what's dangerous is how silent this suffering is. You walk around smiling, showing up, functioning, but inside you're worn out because you care too much. You care about his moods, his distance, his inconsistency, his silence. And each time he shows you less, you give more, hoping that maybe your love can teach him to love you properly. But love is not supposed to be a lesson. You're not a classroom. You're not a rehabilitation center for emotionally unavailable men. You are a woman with a soul, and your energy is sacred. You see, the healing begins when you no longer make excuses for his behavior. When you stop saying he's just going through something and start saying, I deserve someone who chooses me fully, freely, consistently. Healing starts when you realize that your love shouldn't hurt. It shouldn't make you question your worth. It shouldn't feel like you're begging to be seen. The turning point is when you stop explaining your feelings to someone committed to misunderstanding them. That's when the healing begins. When you realize it's not your job to convince a man to treat you right. You can't heal in the same place that broke you. You can't thrive in a connection that requires you to dim your light just to keep peace. That's not love. That's emotional survival, and you deserve better than that. Now hear this, he will feel it. He might not admit it. He might even pretend he's unbothered, but he will feel the shift when you stop giving him the emotional oxygen he was so used to. When you no longer text first, when you stop asking if he's okay, when you stop justifying his absence with maybe he's just busy, he will feel that silence like thunder. Because your presence was a comfort he never thought he'd lose. And healing isn't loud. It doesn't always come with declarations or goodbyes. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's you choosing to let go without a dramatic exit. Sometimes it's you sitting in your power, knowing that real love wouldn't have made you question your sanity. That's healing, that's growth, that's power. So don't wait for closure from someone who didn't give you consistency. Don't expect accountability from someone who never acknowledged your worth. You don't need his apology to move on. You just need to care enough about yourself to stop caring about him. That's when you heal. That's when you rise. That's when everything changes. The moment you stop caring, you stop trying to prove your worth to someone who was never looking for it in the first place. You stop performing, you stop begging to be seen, you stop over-explaining your emotions to someone who made you feel like being sensitive was a weakness. When you no longer care, you reclaim every piece of you that got lost while you were trying to hold together a connection that was breaking you from the inside out. Let's be real. When a man knows you care, and he's emotionally immature, he takes advantage of that care. He grows comfortable. He becomes careless. Not because he doesn't see your value, but because he assumes your love will always be there. He gets lazy with your heart. He thinks you won't walk away. And when you finally do stop caring, he begins to panic. Not because he loved you properly, but because he lost the control your caring gave him. A woman who stops caring is not bitter. She's exhausted. She's done giving herself to someone who meets her effort with silence. She's tired of trying to fix something that was never hers to fix. Because you can't heal someone who doesn't think they're broken. You can't love someone into emotional maturity. And the more you care in that space, the more you suffer. But here's the powerful part. When you stop caring, he finally sees the mirror. Your absence becomes the loudest presence in his life. He doesn't hear from you. He doesn't feel your emotional labor wrapping around him like a warm coat anymore. And suddenly, the cold hits. Your distance becomes a mirror reflecting his neglect, his choices, his apathy. And that reflection, it breaks him. Quietly, internally. Because men like that don't shatter on the outside. They fall apart in silence. See, he expected you to chase. He thought your heart would always circle back no matter how poorly he treated it. But when you stop caring, when you stop checking in, stop showing up, stop responding with emotion, he has nothing to feed his ego. You were his emotional supply. Your love gave him identity. And without it, he feels the void. And no, he'll never admit it. He'll pretend to move on. He'll act unbothered. He might even post pictures, stories, try to create the illusion that life is better without you. But behind that mask, he's unraveling. Because deep down, he knows he lost something real, something soft, something safe. And you don't get that kind of love twice. So when you stop caring, you don't just change the story. You end the chapter. You send a message louder than any word ever could. I loved you, but I love me more. That's not cruelty. That's self-respect. That's power. That's freedom. Because when a man breaks, not from your revenge, but from your release, that's when he finally realizes what he had. But by then, the woman who once cared enough to break over him has already healed, risen, and moved on. When a woman truly stops caring, one of the first things she does is reclaim her peace. And let me tell you something. When she chooses peace over the constant emotional chaos, that's when the man begins to feel the shift deep in his bones. See, peace isn't just silence. Peace is her deciding not to respond to disrespect. Peace is her deleting the messages she used to overthink. Peace is her walking away from the argument she once would have stayed up all night trying to fix. Peace is her power returning. He doesn't notice it at first. He mistakes her silence for moodiness. He thinks she's just going through a phase. But slowly, he begins to realize that she's not reacting like she used to. She's not begging. She's not explaining. She's not checking in. And that's when the panic starts to rise, not because he suddenly values her, but because he no longer has access to the parts of her that once kept him emotionally fed. When she chose peace, she was really choosing herself, because for so long she was trying to keep the relationship alive by sacrificing her mental and emotional stability. She was tolerating things that broke her just to keep him whole. She was shrinking so he could feel bigger. And now she's not doing that anymore. She's not in the same emotional ring with him, throwing punches, trying to be heard. She's out. And that absence, it speaks louder than any argument ever could. It's wild how a man starts to see her worth in her silence, not her words, not her tears, but her absence, her withdrawal. That's when he finally feels the weight of his own choices. Because when she starts protecting her peace, she's no longer emotionally invested in fixing what's broken between them. She's protecting her mind, her spirit, her sanity. And that means he's no longer her priority. And let's be clear, she didn't walk away overnight. She disconnected slowly. She got tired of waiting for the change he promised but never delivered. She got tired of feeling alone in a relationship. And when the day came that she truly chose peace, it was because staying was costing her too much. Her joy, her clarity, her purpose. Now he's sitting in the silence, and it's deafening. Because when you've been the source of someone's emotional grounding for so long, your absence becomes a void they can't ignore. He may try to distract himself. Another woman, more noise, more games. But nothing fills that space the way your energy did. And now he realizes that. He realizes he lost not just a woman who cared, but a woman who brought calm to his chaos, who tried to see the good in him when he couldn't even see it himself. But now she sees through the cycle, and she's no longer interested in spinning inside it. The irony is, she doesn't even want him to suffer. She just wants peace. And sometimes peace looks like letting go, not with hatred, not with anger, but with a quiet, strong knowing, I deserve better than this. And when a woman walks with that energy, when she moves on not to make him jealous, but to make herself whole, that's the moment everything shifts. Because he sees that the version of her he took for granted is never coming back. When a woman stops caring, she also stops explaining. This may sound simple, but it's one of the most powerful shifts a woman can make. You see, for so long, she's been giving her energy explaining herself, justifying her feelings, and trying to make him understand where she's coming from. She's worn herself thin, trying to be heard, trying to make sense of his silence, his distance, his mixed signals. She's repeated the same stories, the same pleas over and over, hoping he would finally get it, hoping he would finally change. But here's the truth. When a woman stops caring, she refuses to be the emotional laborer any longer. There's a deep exhaustion in explaining yourself to someone who doesn't want to listen. It's like shouting into a void, and eventually you stop shouting. You stop bending over backwards to make your pain visible, to make your love undeniable. You stop giving him the map to your heart because he's never really followed it. And that's liberating, because when she stops explaining, she reclaims her energy. So that energy she spent trying to justify her feelings, her worth, her needs, that energy she gave freely despite feeling unheard, that energy she now reserves for herself. Imagine the power of not giving an explanation for your absence, for your silence, for your decision to move on. It confuses him because he's used to having access to your words, your emotions, your constant efforts to bridge the gap. Without your explanations, he's forced to face the reality of what he lost on his own. He can't blame miscommunication anymore. He can't say, she didn't tell me how she felt. You spoke, you showed up, you gave all the signs. But when you stop explaining, you're setting a clear boundary. You're saying, I am not responsible for your understanding anymore. I am responsible for my peace. It's important to realize that this is not about pride or ego. It's about self-respect. It's about honoring your emotional well-being by refusing to be trapped in endless cycles of trying to make someone see your value when they choose to look away. When she stops explaining, she's no longer trying to fix something that's fundamentally broken. She's no longer hoping for clarity from someone who thrives on confusion. She's done making her feelings a puzzle for him to solve. She's simply walking away with quiet strength. And here's the remarkable thing. Once she stops explaining, he starts questioning. Without the constant narratives to rely on, he begins to wonder where he went wrong. He begins to feel the emptiness of not having her explanations to comfort him, to guide him. That's when the tables turn. That's when he starts to realize how much she truly meant, even if he never said it before. The silence that was once peaceful for her becomes an unsettling echo for him. By not explaining, she also protects herself from the pain of rejection. When you constantly explain your feelings and get dismissed, it chips away at your self-worth. But when you decide to hold your peace and withhold explanations, you're shielding your heart from unnecessary wounds. You are choosing to heal rather than to hurt yourself over and over. You're choosing to preserve your dignity rather than lose it in endless justifications. Remember, stopping explanations doesn't mean you don't care anymore. It means you care enough to stop wasting your breath where it's not valued. It means you're learning that your peace is more important than his understanding. It means you're stepping into your power by refusing to participate in a cycle of emotional imbalance. And this shift, it will make him beg for your energy again. Not because you give it away freely, but because he sees what he lost when you stopped giving it. So hold firm in your decision to stop explaining. Trust that your silence is louder than any argument you could have had. And know that in protecting your peace, you are building a foundation strong enough to carry you toward a better, brighter future. When the woman stops caring, she begins to rebuild herself in ways that are both quiet and powerful. It's not just about withdrawing her energy or ceasing to explain. It's about shifting her focus entirely onto her own growth, her own dreams, and her own well-being. This shift is profound because for so long she might have defined her happiness by his reactions, his attention, his presence. But the day she stops caring, she starts to recognize that her worth doesn't depend on anyone else's validation. She begins to invest in herself in ways she never did before. This process starts with reclaiming time that was once consumed by thoughts about him, by worrying about how he feels, or by trying to fix what wasn't meant to be fixed. Now that time is devoted to rediscovering passions, setting new goals, and embracing habits that nurture her soul. Whether it's learning something new, focusing on her career, or simply spending time with people who truly value her, these actions become her form of self-love. It's a daily commitment to herself, a promise that she will no longer let someone else's inability to value her steal her peace. As she focuses on herself, there's a transformation that happens internally. The hurt and disappointment begin to fade into lessons. She starts to see the wisdom in the pain, the strength born out of struggle. She understands that every tear shed, every moment of doubt, was a step toward becoming the woman she is now. Resilient, self-aware, and unshakable. This is the power of focus. It turns pain into purpose. And when purpose drives her actions, nothing can hold her back. Patient. Focusing also means setting boundaries with unwavering firmness. She no longer allows people, especially him, to drain her energy or cloud her vision. She learns to say no without guilt and to protect her emotional space fiercely. This boundary setting is a declaration that her energy is sacred and will only be shared with those who respect and uplift her. It's an act of self-preservation, a way to ensure that she continues to grow without being pulled back into toxic patterns or old cycles of emotional depletion. Another vital aspect of this focus is the renewal of self-confidence. When a woman stops caring about the opinions or actions of someone who didn't value her, she stops shrinking to fit their expectations. She stands tall in her authenticity. and embraces her imperfections as part of her unique beauty. This confidence radiates outward, attracting positivity, respect, and new opportunities. She becomes magnetic, not because she seeks attention, but because she's found contentment within herself. This journey of focusing on herself also rekindles hope and vision for the future. Instead of being stuck in the past or fixated on what could have been, she looks ahead with clarity and determination. She dreams bigger, plans smarter, and acts with intentionality. Every small step forward is a victory, a testament to her commitment to live on her own terms. She understands that by focusing on herself, she is laying the groundwork for a future where she will never again need to beg for anyone's energy because she is already whole. And here's something powerful. When she focuses on herself, she sends a clear message without saying a word. She shows him what he's lost. She demonstrates the strength and peace that come from self-love and self-respect. And it's this transformation, this unwavering focus, that will make him realize the true value of her energy, the kind of energy that can no longer be taken for granted or ignored. So, in the quiet moments when she chooses herself over the chaos, when she focuses on her growth instead of his games, she's not just surviving, she's thriving. And this thriving will be the moment he sees her strength and wishes he had never let it go. There comes a moment in every woman's life when she realizes that waiting for someone else's approval or affection is no longer an option. It's in this moment that she understands the true power of detachment, not as a form of bitterness or anger, but as a conscious decision to reclaim her peace and her energy. When she chooses to focus on herself completely, something remarkable happens. The man who once took her presence for granted begins to notice her absence. This absence speaks louder than any words ever could. It's a silent message that says, I am no longer available to you in the way I once was. And that silence, that space, holds a powerful kind of energy. This energy is magnetic. It's not about playing games or trying to make him jealous. It's about living authentically and unapologetically with the confidence that comes from knowing your worth. When a woman steps into this space, she no longer chases. Instead, she attracts. She attracts respect, genuine attention, and the kind of love that is rooted in mutual appreciation rather than neediness. Her life becomes a testament to the fact that her happiness is not dependent on anyone else's presence or approval. And it's this truth that unsettles him because he realizes that the dynamic has shifted. She holds the power now. You see, when she was always available, always responding, always caring, it created a pattern where he could take her for granted without consequence. But when she steps away, when she withholds that energy and focuses on her own growth, it breaks that pattern. He's faced with a reality where his actions no longer guarantee the same responses. This can be unsettling, frustrating even, because it forces him to confront what he may have overlooked or dismissed. And often that confrontation happens in silence, in the moments when he's alone and reflecting on what he lost. But the beauty of this moment is that it's not about making him suffer or teaching him a lesson. It's about the woman reclaiming her life and refusing to settle for anything less than she deserves. Her focus shifts entirely to building her dreams, nurturing her passions, and surrounding herself with people who genuinely uplift her. This shift creates a ripple effect. Her confidence grows, her energy expands, and her world begins to transform. And in this transformation, she becomes unstoppable. She understands now that her energy is sacred. It's not something to be given away freely, especially not to someone who doesn't value it. Instead, she guards it carefully and invests it in what truly matters: her growth, her happiness, and her peace. This mindset isn't just about self-protection, it's about empowerment. It's about taking control of her narrative and refusing to let past disappointments dictate her future. Every day she chooses to focus on herself, She strengthens her foundation and builds a life that no one can shake. And while he may not admit it, he's watching. He's witnessing the woman he once thought he had all to himself becoming radiant, confident, and free. The silence she maintains is a powerful form of communication. It tells him without words that she no longer needs him to define her worth. And this realization can be jarring because it reveals the true depth of what was lost when she was taken for granted. Ultimately, this journey is about growth and self-respect. It's about understanding that the day she stops caring isn't a moment of weakness, but one of profound strength. It's the day she chooses herself over anyone who cannot appreciate her. And in that choice lies her freedom. She moves forward with her head held high, knowing that her energy is no longer his to take. And in that quiet power, she is truly unbreakable.